Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady, where Karens assume that everyone is an employee and demands to be served. And in today's episode, a Karen thinks that OP is a police officer, and she demands he serve her. And it only gets worse from there. I hope you enjoy the stories. Don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. So I work as a utility sub-metering technician on new construction projects for residential buildings. It's essentially my job to program meters in each suite and supervise the work done by our contracted electricians. So last year, I arrived on this new site on my own. Our company is small and I'm usually working independently. Because it's my first time on site, I have to go through site orientation conducted by the site supervisor. My company has a lot of new projects throughout the year, so I'm constantly going to new sites and taking part in many safety orientations. This one was no different, and I was hearing the same safety regulations that I've heard countless times before. Anyways, I was half asleep when going through orientation, as it was 7 o'clock in the morning, and I usually start work at 9 a.m. There were a few general laborers doing the orientation with me at the same time who I didn't know. As the site supervisor was going through the safety regulations, he stopped and asked us if we were all general laborers who worked for the company. Everyone except myself nodded along. Because I was sleepy, I was only half paying attention, and I made the mistake of not speaking up and saying that I didn't work for Company X. Now, it was fairly unprofessional of me to not show up to work 100% awake, but hey, I'm human. So after the orientation, the construction foreman for Company X walks in, and the site super told everyone that the construction foreman was the guy everyone had to report to. Another thing is, general laborers come and go all the time, and Company X was a large contractor, so it's not totally unreasonable that the construction foreman wouldn't have met the laborers at this particular project before. Everyone then exits the site office where the orientation was being held, and all the laborers gather around the foreman to be given assignments. Just basic stuff like having to carry a bunch of material from one place to another. As the construction foreman's giving these assignments to them, I'm standing about 15 feet away with my notebook, quietly going over some project drawings. After the foreman's done giving assignments to all the laborers, he walks up to me and in a very aggressive way tells me that it's very rude of me to not pay attention to him when he's giving out work assignments when he's my boss. He then goes on to say that I've made a poor first impression with him and that he's not someone I should mess with. The guy basically screams at me to go help this other guy unload some material from a pallet, and then he walks away before I have any time to clear up the misunderstanding. Around an hour later, I'm inside the electrical room working on setting up the layout of our main panel, while on the phone with my electrician, and that's when the foreman walks by and he notices me. The guy walks in and he yells, "Are you effing kidding me? Are you stupid? When you were finished unloading the pallets, you were supposed to come to me for the next assignment. You don't just go wandering off to do something else." Now that's kind of weird because I never did do the work he told me to do earlier. I was also kind of nervous being screamed at in such an aggressive manner. So I replied in an honestly somewhat frightened voice, "Hey, please stop harassing me, sir. Can't you see that I'm on the phone?" And that really seemed to set him off because he then tried to grab my phone out of my hand because he's seriously pissed off at this point. He then tells me that he's had enough and to get off the site as I'm no longer employed. He then told me to notify the site super that I'll be going home now. Just as he's about to walk out of the room, he then notices on the back of my safety vest the name of the company I actually work for. Stumbling on his words, he goes, "Wait, are you one of the guys that John sent here for the week?" I replied, "Nope, I work for the utility metering company here." He then goes, "Oh, F me," and then walks out of the room. The electrician who was still on the line starts laughing because I guess he heard the whole thing. I wasn't laughing along with him though, I was kind of scared at that point. I've never been fired from anywhere before, and that's definitely not how I wanted to start my morning, having a 50-year-old homeless looking fellow yell at me trying to snatch my phone. Hey, at least the guy realized his mistake in the end, right? Like, if I were OP, I'd be screaming, "You can't fire me, I quit," and then just go back to checking meters. With that said though, if OP just tried a little bit harder to tell the dude that he didn't work there, I think this could have all been avoided. And guys, I used to work on construction sites all the time, and I really don't miss the power-tripping idiots who just scream at people. This one's kind of a different one for you. It was certainly a new one for me. Last week, I had just finished doing some shopping, and after loading up my car, I got a hankering for something sweet and caffeinated from the local Starbucks. The closest shop was clear on the other side of the massive parking lot outside the big box store, so I thought, F it, I could stand to get a little more cardio today. So I walk across the lot from my car to get some coffee. And here's where it gets interesting. So recently, it rained for the first time in months where I live, and I keep a little squeegee in my car, wrapped in a dirty, all-purpose rag that I've used in the past to clean my wiper blades, polish my rims, and wipe the grime from my hands after fiddling under the hood. As I'm wiping the windows with the squeegee in one hand and holding the rag in the other, this minivan pulls right up next to me and takes the stall beside mine. As I'm finishing, the driver hops out of her van and stops right in front of me with some cash in hand. She'll be playing the parts of presumptuous prude. The woman comes up to me and says, "Hey, when you're done here, could you do my windows as well?" At that I say, "Excuse me?" The woman then crinkles her nose and says, "Could you please wipe down my windows?" At that I respond, sure, I guess." She then says, "You can take this now, and get to it when you're finished with this person's car. That would be fine. I don't know how much they gave you, but this should be enough." I'm just staring at the woman, and she shakes her cash at me impatiently. I say to her, this is my car, ma'am." Hearing me say that, she says, "Sure, whatever." She said it with this condescending sneer that just got my hackles up. Thinking back on it, I should have just taken her cash, pocketed it, climbed into my car, and drove off. Instead, I say to her, "You know, I don't think so. Keep your cash." The woman then says, "Oh, don't be so proud. Take it and be happy with what you get. I'm sure you need it, so what's the big deal?" I respond, "Excuse you, but I own this car. I bought it." She then says, "Don't be rude. You need this damn money. So take the cash and wipe my car. That's how a business transaction works." She then waves the cash at me like it was a bell calling a servant. And I tell her, "Look, I'm just wiping down my own car before I drive home. Save your cash for someone who needs it." She says to me, as if, "There's no way someone like you could afford anything but a bus ticket. You're gonna take my money, you're gonna wipe my car, and then you can go back to your corner or wherever you came from to shake people down for change." And that's when it hit me. I'm wearing a ratty pair of tennis shoes that I was planning on replacing next month with my next paycheck. I also have on a pair of faded blue jeans, a red hoodie, and for the past week, I've been failing to keep my hair and beard neat and tidy. The parking lot was covered in dirty water, and after walking through it, my shoes were covered in wet silt, and I had some dark speckles on my jeans from puddle splashes. I truly did look homeless, and using a squeegee on my car with a dirty rag in hand helped me complete the look. So at this point, I look at the squeegee and the rag in my hands, and then looked at this presumptuous Karen, who now has a look that says, "Well, I'm waiting," and I lost every last F I had to give. I scream at her and say, "Go shove that money where the sun don't shine, lady. I'm going home." I then pulled the keys out of my pockets, opened my door, and drove off as the woman stood there with a dumbfounded look on her face. Yeah, so I just want to say that it's disgusting how some people treat others just for even having the appearance of being homeless. And you know what they say about people who assume, right? Like, that Karen is a shining example. And this person says, "Since she was eager to give you money, I think I would have just taken it and drove off." Yeah, I think that would be stealing though. Like, she paid for a service. So what you do is you take the money, do a half-ass wipe on her windshield, and that's when you can leave with the money. Jokes aside, this person shares their friend's experience. And this person says, "On this day, my friend was going out to eat with her dad. Her dad's a carpenter, and he works long hours, and he's usually lightly covered in sawdust, paint, stain, what have you, and he's not ashamed to go out in public like that, as he shouldn't be. She, on the other hand, always dresses nice. Not expensive, but she puts the effort into looking good. At least business casual. They both also have a very dark sense of humor. So they get a table, and as they're being seated, she sees a friend and goes to talk to her friend. They talk for about a minute when someone pokes her on the shoulder. A Karen standing there and asked if she's the manager, as she's dressed nice and she's talking to a customer, just like a manager would. So my friend decides to just play dumb and ask, "What's wrong?" The lady then proceeds to tell her that there's a homeless man who had just wandered over to a seat and sat down near her. My friend looks over the Karen and she sees her dad. She smiles inside and decides to be extra evil and explain that she can't do anything about it. If he's a paying customer and he has shirts and shoes on, then he has to be allowed in, acting like she's got no power. My friend then says that maybe Karen could go talk to him. Maybe she can ask him to move. just to see how far and crazy this lady's willing to take it. Hearing my friend say that, the Karen's face lights up, like the chance to yell at a homeless person with no ramifications. Karen jumps on that opportunity just as my friend expected. Karen then stomps over to her father and starts berating him, telling him that he doesn't belong here, and how dare he come in here all dirty and disgusting. Her father's quite taken aback, but then he looks over and sees his daughter smiling at him. He stops getting upset and angry, and he just starts fake crying. His daughter then rushes over to her father and says, "How dare you talk to my father this way? He's worked hard every day to put food on the table." By this time, everyone's looking at the Karen. She's speechless and red-faced. She then sputters, and she's so distraught that she just grabs her purse and runs outside, not even paying her bill. At this point, the real manager's coming over, after hearing the yelling, only to see the lady running outside, and he chases her down. The father and daughter now have a nice laugh over their meal, while the lady has to try to explain this crazy story to the manager. Luckily, the police weren't called, as she did come back and pay. The lady didn't get in trouble, she just looked like an absolute fool in a relatively small town. Oof, that woman walked right into that trap, didn't she? And holy cow, some people, I tell you, like, it's disgusting how some people treat others who are less fortunate. And I only wish the story ended like this. Karen ran out without paying, the manager caught the dine and dashing Karen, called the police, and she was charged. Wouldn't that have been the ultimate instant karma? So I'm someone who drives a retired police interceptor, black and white with a push bar and the spotlight, but no emblems or anything. It's also got scratched up paint everywhere. I'm saving up to get it repainted, so I don't intend to appear like I'm law enforcement. So one day, I'm just sitting around in my car in the back of a parking lot of a business, out of sight, out of mind, munching on a Subway sandwich, minding my own business. I'm so enthralled in my sandwich when I hear a sharp rapping on my window. I look up mid-bite to see an older lady who matches those "I want to talk to your manager" memes to a T. I roll down my window and ask, "How can I help her?" The woman responds, "Oh, you finally managed to come out here and make your presence known? I've been complaining to the police for weeks about the homeless, who just hang out in this area around our businesses. Look, there's one right there." She then proceeds to point at a guy who's well away from anything, just sitting there doing nothing out of the way. I say to her, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but there's a mistake. I'm not a cop, and this is a retired cruiser. If you want me to go somewhere else, I don't mind." The Karen says, "What I want you to do is stop lying to me, get off your ass, and go tell that homeless guy to leave. What do you use my tax dollars for?" I respond, "First of all, don't effing talk to me like that. I've been nothing but courteous to you and honest. I'm not a cop. I would suggest calling the non-emergency line for the local police department." Karen then says, "I pay your salary, you a-hole, so you have to do your job. You have no right to talk to me like that. You're so unprofessional." So with that, I promptly roll up my window, which is super tinted, and go back to eating my sandwich and turn the radio up. Next thing you know, a few minutes later, I get a few cops rolling up with lights and sirens. They surround my car and tell me to get out of the car. I promptly comply. They search me, let me go, and start talking to me. They said they got a call that I was impersonating a police officer, and if I was lying about being a cop, I'll be in big trouble. Now, an important thing to note is I've been doing monthly ride-alongs with this police department for a few years now, so I'm a little acquainted with most of the officers. Luckily, another cop car pulls up as backup, and they saw me. They also knew what I drove and knew that it's not something I would ever do, as I've shown them nothing but respect for my rides with them. Fast forward a few minutes and they talk to the homeless guy, who confirms that I've done nothing but sit there and eat my sandwich in peace. They then turn to the lady and they start lecturing her on lying like that, and how it could have turned into a very dangerous situation for me, and how she's tying up the emergency resources on this. The woman doesn't like this, and she gets mouthy with the officers. Cue some more "I pay your damn salary, I want your supervisor," etc, etc. So a supervisor comes down, and it's actually a sergeant that I'm friends with who's been pushing me to test and join the police department. He's a really nice guy, and he's really good at his job and de-escalating any situation. The Karen now starts shouting at him, and she ends up poking him in the chest with her fingers. He tells her not to ever do that again, and she's lucky she's not already arrested. She then proceeds to tell him to F off, and then she shoves him. The next thing you know, she's in handcuffs, slapped with a bunch of charges, and she's crying in tears in the back of a patrol car. The sergeant then walks up to me and he tells me what happens and that the police department is gonna press charges. Cue all of us laughing at the situation, and then they leave. I walk up to the homeless guy who basically told them the truth about what happened, asked if he's hungry, to which he says yes. I buy him a sandwich from the Subway next door, and he thanks me. I thank him and continue on my way. This is basically what solidified the idea that I needed to paint my car. So for all of you who are wondering, OP does post a picture of the car that he drives, and he does in fact look like a police officer. But not an officer in 2023, guys. Like, this Karen really needs to pay attention to the cop cars around her. But what a scary situation, right? Oh, you're not an officer? Well, you must be impersonating an officer then. Let's send you to jail. Like, I'm glad it worked out for OP and nobody was hurt. So I've been lurking in the sub for a while now, and I do believe that these stories really happen to other people. But I always thought that I don't look like a person that a Karen would even go near, let alone yell at and demand stuff from, but here we are. This happened on Friday. I had just gotten off work, and I was killing time because I was meeting a friend and then going to the range. How I look is my company's uniform is a blue polo t-shirt with the company logo above the left breast pocket. I've also got steel-toed boots on, and I'm wearing shorts that day, as it was ungodly hot outside. I also have full tattoo sleeves on both of my arms, same with my legs, and I have quite a few scars on my forearms, some of them messed up my tattoos. So I was at the Best Buy looking at the headphones while listening to a lecture on cosmology, so I can hear pretty well. When all of a sudden, I hear it, someone snapping their fingers. And like most people, I effing despise when people do that nonsense. I didn't think it was geared towards me, but I had to look at whoever was doing that terrible action. So I turn around, and there it is, a whole Karen, with the hairstyle, the pink jumpsuit, all in her entitled glory. She then locks eyes with me and says, "I've been trying to get your attention for so long now. Now tell me where..." That's when I cut her off and say, "Who the F do you think you're talking to? Cause it better not be me. I don't work here, so F off." Then I walked away. She was shuddering and not saying complete words, so I went to the games area. Now what happened next is gonna need a little bit of context. I was homeless for a decent amount of my life, and when you're homeless, you tend to get jumpy and your reactions to being surprise touched become sharp and fast. My family and friends know that you should never sneak up on me. So there I am in the games area with my headphones in, when I feel a large hand grab my shoulder hard. That makes me spin around, throw up an elbow at my attacker, and I connect with the jaw of a man that's about my size. The guy goes straight to the ground and he immediately starts bleeding. And who's standing next to him? Of course, it's Karen, who's now screaming, "He's attacking my husband, he's killing him." And yes, you read that right, she said killing. So of course, several employees and managers are now flying in our direction and they're calling the police. The police walk in and saw me standing over a bleeding dude and his hysterical wife. And they separate us, and at first, they didn't even ask me for my side of the story. They just saw me and decided I'm guilty. Cop number 1 says, "I'm gonna put you in handcuffs." Meanwhile, cop number 2 says, "You've got a lot of tattoos. What crew are you with?" I tell him, "No, I don't have a crew." That's when cop 2 says, "Really? Cause you have some obvious bullet wounds." At this point, I'm getting uncomfortable and I think it's time for me to talk to a supervisor. So I ask for one. At the same time, I can now see an ambulance roll up to the storefront. And a few minutes later, I see a stretcher with Karen's husband on it. I literally laugh out loud at this point, and cop 1 says, "So you think that's funny, huh?" I tell him, "Yeah, it'll be funny to you as well when you find out what really happened." Fast forward a bit, and the cop supervisor is walking over to us, and I think finally, I'm gonna get to tell my side of the story, but I was somewhat wrong. The cop supervisor walks up to cop 1 and says, "He shouldn't be in handcuffs." Cop 1 says, "Isn't he under arrest?" The supervisor tells him, "No, I saw the video." He then asked, "Sir, are you gonna wanna press charges?" I say to him, "Against the idiot who put his hands on me, or your fellow officers for handcuffing me and assuming that I'm a gang member? I just want to get the F out of here." Cop 1 apologizes and he takes the handcuffs off. I then start to book it out of the store. My friend is definitely pissed off because she has no idea why I wasn't there yet, due to the fact that I couldn't text her back because of the handcuffs and all. And unlike a lot of stories I've seen on here, no manager offered me any free stuff or anything like that. I was told by the store manager that I would not be welcomed back in the store. Like I gave a F anyways. Thank goodness for cameras, guys, because honestly, Cop 1 seemed like he was ready to toss OP in jail and throw away the keys, right? That's another example of why you should never touch a stranger. Like, you don't know how they'll react. This is an old story that happened ages ago, but I was just reminded of it. We used to have weekend gaming events in an office building that was unfortunately on a street where streetwalkers offered their services. There were always a few walking up and down the street when we were there, and occasionally you could see them getting into cars, even during the day. It's not the nicest area, but a friend worked there, and we could borrow the cafeteria for free, so we didn't complain. One time we went to lunch, 3 guys aged 18 to 20, and this one guy's girlfriend, she was 17. We were all getting inside the car. Before we could leave, someone knocked on the window. It was 2 police officers. From the looks of it, they weren't that experienced yet because they said, "IDs, please." We then hand them over. The officer then looks at the girl and says, "This says you're underage, miss." To which the girl says, "That's because I am." The police then looked shocked and said, "But if you're underage, you can't, you know." The guy's girlfriend responds, "I can't what?" The officer says, "Well, you just got into the car with these 3, and I mean..." Girlfriend then points at her boyfriend and says, "Yeah, so that's my boyfriend." At this point, all 4 of us are barely keeping ourselves together in the car. The police, all red in the face, says, "Oh, we're sorry, we just thought you were..." Girlfriend responds, "You thought I was what?" The officer responds, "Well, you know where you are, right? I mean, what usually happens in this area?" And the 4 of us are in the car losing it, barely able to breathe, and the police officer says, "Well, sorry, have a nice day, but you shouldn't be around these parts because, you know, people could be mistaking you for..." You know. Girlfriend responds, "Mistaking me for what?" The officers then walk away, and that's definitely one that frequently comes up whenever we meet up. Guys, this post is hilarious, and I love how the cops couldn't really say what they thought she was. Wild assumptions though, right? And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the stories today. I hope you didn't shake your heads too hard, and if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitled People episode, where Karens are at it again. They're calling 911, they're getting arrested, they're stealing. It's wild, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.